Well, you're getting a lot of people nervous. There's a lot of schools that are now looking around saying maybe this thing we built up, this ACC conference that's been around for decades, may not be as stable as it was once was. North Carolina now is currently in legislation talks about possibly changing their laws so that if they can separate themselves from North Carolina State, it's almost a foregone conclusion. They're going to go somewhere else. And if North Carolina leaves, the ACC falls. Clemson and Florida State, obviously, they're in legal trouble right now. I personally think that the Florida State judge might be moving that charge in Florida, might be moving that course ahead faster from the North Carolina and the ACC charge in North Carolina State. So there's just a lot of things that are looking at it that it makes it look a lot less stable. It's also interesting. We've had third-party talks, people at Louisville. Certainly, there's been some reach out from Pitt and Virginia Tech. I don't know about North Carolina State yet, but and then you have the wild card is Miami. Who knows where Miami might go? They're a private school; they can make all kinds of choices that others can't, but they don't want to be left behind either. So it's just there's too many. What do we want to call them? Too many markers out there to say that it's just going to be okay and we're going to turn the page to the next year and there's not going to be any trouble. I think there's real issues with the ESPN contract coming up in February and whether they re-up or they decide that they're going to renegotiate that deal. So I don't know that there's anything imminent like in the next 2 or 3 days, but certainly there's enough out there to understand that the overall picture for the ACC is not good.
So Nathan, when you look at these commodities in the ACC, how would you rate and evaluate each one based on football, media prowess, academic institution, everything involved, relationships, as you look at the ACC?
Yeah, so we've done several studies, right? We've had multiple shows over what's going on let's talk about the top four. First of all, Florida State is the first one to sue to get out. Their media value is the very tip top of the ACC. They're going to pretty much be able to go wherever they want, but as the time goes, their value might be coming down. They might not get a full share to join. North Carolina is the next one that we would want to talk about, and they're wanted by both the SEC and the Big Ten. So their value is quite high as well. I think more with them, you get into North Carolina, which the demographics are growing. The rest of the country is kind of going down. John Wilner put out an article a few days ago saying that's kind of the problem that's happening in college football right now is that these conferences are losing students. The birth rate's down in the United States. We're not bringing in as many people, and that's a big problem for big-time college football. So North Carolina demographics are good, and I think the everything's pointing up with that for sure. Then we'll go to Clemson. Clemson's TV value is very high. I'm not sure where they would rank in the priority level. In my opinion, I think Clemson is more valuable for the Big Ten than the SEC. I still don't know why the SEC would double up in South Carolina. Demographics there are not like they are in North Carolina. So that one I'm a little bit out on a little bit. I'm not sure that they have a spot in the SEC. So if they don't get into the Big Ten, Clemson might have some troubles. I'm not predicting the future. I'm not telling Clemson. I don't want to see a bunch of DMs in my Twitter feed that basically say I'm down on Clemson. I think Clemson's a huge property, but is it going to be enough for the SEC to also want them? Maybe, but I am not 100% sure on that. And the last one is Miami. Miami is a football brand first and foremost. Everybody knows that. There's been these articles the last week and a half or so that say should Miami just fold all sports? That's ridiculous in my opinion. Miami's a huge brand. They're definitely wanted, but again, are they wanted in both the SEC and the Big Ten? I don't know. If these schools aren't wanted in both the SEC and the Big Ten, then their value for negotiation goes down considerably. So, in my opinion, those are the four that are most wanted, and then we can go down the line if you'd like and go through the others. But those are the ones that we talk about most often.
Well, Nathan, let's backtrack to Florida State because you made the point that obviously if we look at the status of the football program historically, if we look at the current state of the program, if we look at the eyeballs looking at the TV sets and the streaming, then Florida State's number one, and that's clear. However, you mentioned that as this process continues, that their value goes down a little bit. Is that simply because they're in a desperate situation and they've got to get out? And so, obviously, if you're in any negotiating situation and the negotiating partner has no options, or maybe only one other option, then you've got them in a good place.
Right. That is the problem. I was talking about this last night. I'm not sure if I did it on air, but I firmly believe that if Florida State was able to get out in January, February of this year, they would have been a full share member, and I think they were wanted by both the SEC and the Big Ten. As the lawsuit has progressed, and we found out more about the way Florida State does business, I think there's some concerns. Maybe there's political issues at Florida. Maybe they have people that aren't liked in one corner of the world or the other, and so that value may have come down. Also, you have the issue with Florida State and the SEC. They haven't always played well together, right? Florida State was originally an independent brand. Bobby Bowden famously said, "We're not going to the SEC. We much rather be in the ACC." So there's long-standing issues that go with that part, and then that negotiation then would go down. The Big Ten's not dumb. They just got Oregon and Washington at half rate, so they got 2 for 1. I could totally see them doing the exact same thing with a Clemson, Florida State, UNC, even a Miami. So, in my opinion, the longer this goes, while the negotiating power for Florida State to get out of the ACC might not go down by itself, the value out in college football land, the TV revenue that is associated with it might not carry forward. They might only go in as a half share, because why pay more if you can pay less?
So, as a now well established Big 12 guy, because your beloved BYU football team, of course,
Right.
entering a second season in the Big 12,
Right.
what we view as is common in college football in regards to relationships and conferences is completely different than what it was. Really, nothing's off the board as
Right.
long as you've got the value. It doesn't matter coast to coast, whatever it
Yes.
is going to take place. So there is no real relationship, maybe outside of West Virginia, having ties to Virginia Tech and a rivalry there, and Pitt and so forth. But in regards to the core of the Big 12, little connection to these schools, if anything. However, when you look at it, other than, let's say, for BYU or for any particular schools that you review in the Big 12,
Right.
other than just wanting to add value to the conference to make the conference itself as valuable as possible, are there any angles that any of these schools have to wanting any particular members in coming in from the ACC than others?
Well, sure. I mean, Brett Yormark's looking at the Eastern time zone for sure. Louisville, I'm not sure if they're Central or Eastern, but they're at the top of the list if Miami's off the board. So Louisville, Virginia Tech, obviously regional for West Virginia. Pitt, another regional get for West Virginia. Look, West Virginia's been out there for over a decade by themselves, and they've needed help for a while. So I think that would be something that would help solidify that area. And then you have Georgia Tech and North Carolina State. I personally think North Carolina State's a better pick. But Georgia Tech is also a very good brand. There's no reason they couldn't come in. You bring up a really good issue, though. Why these schools and why bring them into the Big 12 at all? Right? It's addition by subtraction. At the end of the day, the Big 12 needs to be as strong as it can to make itself the third conference. Eventually, in my opinion, and I've said this for a long time, I think we're going to end up with 3 super conferences. The 2 that are going to have all the value are going to be the SEC and the Big Ten. And then there's going to be a third conference that is going to be the best of the rest. And that best of the rest conference could be 20 or 24 schools. And it's the schools that simply don't carry enough value to get into the other 2 conferences. And in doing so, you cover roughly 72 schools. It's just over half of all Division I football, and that solidifies against a lot of things, lawsuits with antitrust issues, collaboration that was done off the books that maybe some people want to sue to get into. I think if they cover between 60 and 72 schools in one sort of division that would take care of all lawsuits and everything else that might come along, and that would put us forward for the next 5 to 10 years until we get to that next piece of realignment that everybody knows will eventually come. So, in my opinion, the Big 12 needs to have a addition by bringing in those and fortifying with those 4 to 6 schools, maybe 8 schools, but I don't think so. So 4 schools to the Big 12, go to 20, and then sit still.
So, Nathan, to set you up for some comments on Brett Yormark, I'm going to state it this way because a lot of Big 12 fans have called me a hater for either
Okay.
just because if there's anything negative stated about the Big 12, they don't want to hear it, or because they're not listening to my complete explanation. And it's been this, that I love the Big 12 as a football conference. I love the competitive nature of the top to bottom, that unlike the Big 10 in the last 10 or 15 years, where you basically circle the calendar to watch 3 games and the rest of it doesn't matter because they've got
Right.
no chance. It's exciting. It's competitive. It's balanced, all those things. I love these football brands. I've been watching them since I was a little kid, all of that. It is clear by the data and the revenue distribution, though, as you just stated, that it's not on par currently with the Big Ten or the SEC and
Right.
won't be going into the future. That just can't be debated. Look at the TV contracts and the playoff distribution, where throughout the history of college football, these conferences have always dealt with each other on even terms, meaning we're all involved in this. We split the revenue. This
Yep.
is the first time that there's been an unequal distribution. So my question to you, and maybe it's more of just kind of your feel for where Brett Yormark is. I have been going back to Bob Bowlesby and him making the moves on UCF, Cincinnati, Houston, and BYU, and those being the moves that I posted a video before they even got those 4 schools to say those are the 4 schools that you go get.
Right.
That I think they've done everything extremely well. The thought process about possibly expanding in basketball, Gonzaga, Connecticut, because it's arguably the best basketball conference, and you could lay claim to that. But it's just, I have found it a bit amusing, some of the comments that Yormark has made in recent months, where I know he's got to put on a front of we are confident, we're on equal footing, we're the same, we're relevant. But he's just been a little bit over the top, in my estimation, of talking about we've never been as relevant as we are now. And just some things that he has said that I didn't think that he needed to step out to that degree and stated in such ways when the current landscape and the deals that have been struck in recent months speak otherwise.
Um, I'm not. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, Brett Yormark's got a job. He's representing right now 16 schools that are fighting for their lives in relevancy. Right now, that's football, and he's doing his job as best as possible. I wouldn't read too much into that stuff. At the end of the day, he is a PR guy. He knows what that messaging means, and it carries quite a bit of value out in social media and on the news. So I don't think it hurts the Big 12 at all for him to be going out there and doing that. Whether it actually brings any additional dollars, I don't know. I have no idea. All I can say is for what the Big 12 was compared to where it is now, it's day and night difference. Basketball's tip top. Everybody knows it. They brought in brands that are winning and getting to the Sweet 16, getting into the tournament. That's where additional money can come if you're not going to get it in football. And look, everybody in the Big 12, just take a deep breath. It's okay to say out loud, it's the third conference, right? Once Florida State and Clemson leave the ACC, there's no doubt in anybody's mind the Big 12 is sitting there in the catbird seat. So just enjoy it. Just breathe deep and say, this is who we are. It's much easier to continue to just sort of go with the flow and enjoy where your schools are at now than to constantly be fighting and putting out, I don't even want to call it negativity to the world about, wow, we want to fight for our relevance. So we want people to respect us. Look, people respect the schools in the Big 12. They just aren't the media darlings that you have to look where the schools are. Honestly, in the Big 12, they're all in the middle of the country, right? Demographics in the United States, all on the edges of the country. So you can't fight numbers. At the end of the day, there's only so many people that live in Oklahoma. There's only so many people that live in Utah. So why even worry about that? Just go out and make the biggest and best brands you can. Put the best teams on the field you can. Keep the focus on football. You mentioned he's been out in the news. That trip to Arizona was very pointed. He basically told Arizona, "We love your basketball, but we're a football conference." He's basically putting an alarm bell out to every school in the Big 12, including the ones that might be coming in the future. Football has to be the focus. We're not going to go down the road that the ACC did decades ago, said we're going to be the best basketball conference. Well, the ACC is about to die. Using that as the moniker does nothing. It does nothing because football drives brands. It's 5-1. A 20% value basketball brings to what football brings to an average budget every year. It's ridiculous. The numbers, you just can't fight that type of demographics and money. So let's just absorb what we've got, do the best that we can, and put the best products on the field as possible. The private equity stance, I just want to mention that really quick. That came out in the news, and he's been talking about that for a while now. That's another issue. It's not something that they're going to give. They're going to take a short term, what do they call those, payday loans, and they're going to take that money and put it into a football program to get, or athletic program. Here's your $6 million. They're not going to use that money for that. It's not going to go to the schools to supplement their $22 million to get the best football players they can at their schools. They're going to use private equity for something like a huge purchase, like buying a school out of the ACC contract, by supporting somebody leaving a conference to join the Big 12 to make it the third best conference. That's what they're going to use private equity for. They're not going to use it to just do daily operations. That's ridiculous. Big 12 people aren't stupid, and nobody uses private equity that way. And that's where we're going to really get ahead. Once the Big 12 has 20 or 24 schools, and it's the remainder of the good football brands out of the ACC, it is set. It is set for the next 6 to 10 years, and everybody just sit back and watch some good football.
I'm glad you made that clarification, because to put your faith in five-star athletes, for as good as they are, and that they comprise the percentage highest of NFL draft selections, 60-some% of them fail.
Right.
So that would be a losing proposition. And the other ones don't move the meter enough to justify that kind of money.
Right. Right. That's exactly right. I mean, private equity, at the end of the day, it is in essence a payday loan. It is something you want to buy right now. You have to buy it, and you're willing to pay up to 25% interest for some of this money, but immediately it gives you something, right? And that would be a major purchase. Bringing in schools that are basically there to make them so they're going to be there for the long term. And I think that really helps the Big 12 grow. And who knows where the next media deal would be. I really believe that the big media deal has already been made. The Big 10 and the SEC media deals might be the biggest that'll ever happen. I don't see those numbers coming back for quite a while. Money's going other places now. Our entertainment dollar in the United States going other places, and it's not all going to college football like it was maybe 5-6 years ago. So those media deals might not ever be coming back. And in fact, I personally believe the SEC and the Big 10 are going to get closer to the Big 12 than the Big 12 is going to get closer to them.
I would tend to agree with you. And the only data that would fly in our faces would be that somewhat inexplicably, college football TV ratings have gone up the last few seasons.
They have, but the revenue dollars have gone down. More people are watching for less money.
Last question to you, Nathan, concerns this sponsorship deal that's on the table. Not a specific deal, but just the idea of selling the corporate name, the name of the league, and right. Your thoughts about that.
Sure.
That initiative.
Sure. BYU needs $3 more million. Go ahead. I don't care. People have asked me, they get that old Big 12 people get upset with me. They're like, why aren't you worried about the brand? Why, and to them, they've had it a lot longer. For one, I've only had it for 2 years, so I'm not as invested, but honestly, I think it's a stupid thing to argue about. They already do these naming deals in every other league in the world. Premier League, everyone has like 7 sponsors on their jersey. So why do I care what's on a college football jersey? It makes no difference to me. In fact, I hope the Seahawks do more, because they need more money to make that brand better. So I don't care about it at all. I think Yormark's going to get the most out of it that he can. And will SEC and Big Ten eventually do it? Moen, my buddy Moen, contributor and partner Moen, says the Big Ten will never do that. I would never say never. I think eventually the SEC and the Big Ten are going to do it too.